London, 1855. Katherine Zellwood clutched the crumpled letter, her hands trembling as she read the words for perhaps the 20th time that morning. Her father's gambling debts had finally caught up with him and her. The family estate was to be seized within a fortnight unless an astronomical sum was produced. A sum they simply did not have. The drawing room of their modest London townhouse seemed to close in around her. Once, the Zellwood name had commanded respect, but her father had wagered it all away at the gaming tables, along with her mother's jewelry, the family silver, and now, it seemed, Katherine's future. A sharp knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Miss Zellwood, Lord Quinley has arrived," announced the housekeeper, her voice tinged with unusual excitement. Katherine hastily tucked the letter into her pocket. "Lord Quinley? I don't believe we're acquainted." "The Earl of Quinley, miss. He's asking for your father, but as the master is indisposed." Indisposed? The polite fiction for her father's current state passed out in his study after a night of heavy drinking and heavier losses. "Show him in, Mrs. Howe," Katherine said, smoothing her simple morning dress. She had no idea why an earl would call upon their diminished household, but appearances must be maintained. The man who entered seemed to bring the December chill with him. Tall and imposingly built, with raven-dark hair and eyes the color of steel, the Earl of Quinley, a notorious in London society as the Cold Earl, surveyed the room with clinical detachment. "Miss Zellwood," he said, his voice deep and void of warmth. He did not bow or smile. "I had expected to speak with your father. I'm afraid he's unavailable at present, my lord. I am Katherine Zellwood. Perhaps I might be of assistance." His eyes narrowed slightly. "I doubt it. Our business is of a private nature. If it concerns my father's debts, my lord, you may speak freely. I manage the household affairs." A hint of surprise flickered across his features before the mask of indifference returned. "Very well. Your father owes me £5,000. The room seemed to sway beneath Katherine's feet. £5,000, an impossible sum. "I was unaware that my father had borrowed from you directly, Lord Quinley." "He didn't. I purchased his markers from several establishments. I now hold all of your father's outstanding debts." Katherine's mind raced. Why would an earl, one of the wealthiest men in London, concern himself with collecting debts from a fallen gentleman? "May I ask why you would trouble yourself with such matters, my lord?" The earl's expression remained impassive. "I have a proposition." Something in his tone sent a chill down Katherine's spine. "What sort of proposition?" "A business arrangement. I require a wife. You require financial salvation." His words fell like stones between them. "I will forgive your father's debts and settle an additional £10,000 upon your family. In exchange, you will marry me within the week." Katherine stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You cannot be serious." "I assure you, Miss Zellwood, I rarely jest." "But why? Surely with your title and fortune, you could have your pick of society beauties." "I have no interest in society beauties," he said dismissively. "I require a practical arrangement with a woman of good family who understands difficult circumstances. Your reputation for managing your father's affairs speaks to your competence." "You've been investigating me." "Naturally. I don't enter into contracts without due diligence." "Marriage is not a contract, Lord Quinley." His lips curved slightly, though the smile did not reach his eyes. "In our world, Miss Zellwood, it is precisely that. I offer you honesty instead of pretty lies. You'll have wealth, position, and security. Your father will be saved from debtor's prison. In return, you will manage my households and provide an heir. Nothing more is required." Katherine felt as if she were drowning. "And if I refuse?" "Then tomorrow, every creditor in London will receive notice to collect from Charles Zellwood immediately and in full. I imagine you'll be on the street by week's end, and your father in Newgate shortly thereafter." The casual cruelty of his ultimatum stole her breath. "You would ruin us entirely." "Business, Miss Zellwood." Nothing personal. He withdrew a pocket watch, glancing at it with mild interest. I'll require your answer by tomorrow noon. Good day. With a curt nod, the Earl of Quinley departed, leaving Katherine standing in the middle of the drawing room, her world irrevocably altered. The wedding was a cold affair, much like the groom himself. Katherine stood beside Damien Quinley in the private chapel of his London mansion, speaking vows that felt hollow to her ears. No guests attended save for her father, sober for perhaps the first time in years, his eyes unable to meet hers as he gave her away to the man who now owned both their futures. Katherine's gown was exquisite, ivory silk with delicate pearl beading, delivered to her home the day after she had sent her acceptance to Lord Quinley. She had accepted his proposition with a single-line note, "I agree to your terms." His response had been equally succinct, "The wedding will be Wednesday. A dressmaker will call tomorrow." As the ring, a heavy gold band set with diamonds, slid onto her finger, Katherine suppressed a shiver. She was now the Countess of Quinley, married to a man whose reputation for coldness and ruthless business acumen had earned him the nickname the Frost Lord in certain circles. "You may kiss the bride," the chaplain announced, his voice echoing in the nearly empty chapel. Lord Quinley bent slightly, his lips barely brushing against hers in what could scarcely be called a kiss. His hands remained firmly at his sides. "Welcome to Quinley House, Countess," he said quietly as they turned to face the vacant pews. "Your new home awaits." Quinley House on Berkeley Square was a magnificent prison. 3 days after her wedding, Katherine stood at the window of her luxurious bedchamber, watching raindrops trace patterns down the glass. Her husband had not visited her room since installing her there on their wedding night with a formal bow and "My staff will see to your needs." A knock at the door interrupted her melancholy. "Enter," she called, turning to find Mrs. Graves, the housekeeper, standing in the doorway. "His lordship requests your presence in his study, my lady." Katherine nodded, smoothing her sage green day dress. "Thank you, Mrs. Graves. I'll go at once." The housekeeper's expression softened momentarily. "If I may, my lady. His lordship can seem rather austere. But he is fair in his way." Katherine offered a small smile, touched by this first hint of kindness. "Thank you for the reassurance." The Earl's study was located in the East Wing, a wood-panelled sanctuary filled with books and the scent of leather and tobacco. Lord Quinley stood beside a massive mahogany desk, reviewing papers. He did not look up as she entered. "You sent for me, my lord?" "Yes." He placed the papers down and finally met her gaze. "I leave for Quinley Park tomorrow. My country estate in Derbyshire." "I see. And shall I accompany you?" "That is why I summoned you. As my countess, you will naturally reside wherever I do. You have an hour to instruct your lady's maid regarding your packing requirements." Katherine bristled at his tone. "Am I to have no say in the matter?" His eyebrows rose marginally. "Did our arrangement suggest you would?" "Our arrangement, as you call it, was for me to be your wife, not your prisoner. You agreed to manage my households, did you not? My primary residence is Quinley Park. Therefore, your presence is required there." His voice remained perfectly even. "Furthermore, I dislike London society and remain here only when business necessitates it." "I see." Katherine took a steadying breath. "In that case, I shall need to know something of this household I am expected to manage. How many staff? What are the particular requirements of the estate? I assume there are tenant farmers." For the first time, she detected a flicker of surprise in the Earl's eyes. "You truly intend to fulfill that aspect of our arrangement?" "I always honor my obligations, Lord Quinley. Unlike some members of my family." The subtle barb did not go unnoticed. A muscle in his jaw tightened momentarily. "Very well. Quinley Park employs 47 indoor servants and over 100 outdoor staff. There are 32 tenant farms and approximately 3,000 acres of land. The estate books will be made available to you upon our arrival." He opened a drawer and withdrew a small leather case. "This is for you." Katherine accepted it cautiously. Inside lay a set of keys on a silver ring. The mistress's keys, he explained. To the still room, the linen closets, the china cabinets, and the pantries. Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper at Quinlay Park, will explain their uses. Thank you, Katherine said, genuinely surprised by this gesture of trust. Lord Quinlay nodded curtly. We depart at 9 tomorrow morning. Good day, Countess. Derbyshire welcomed them with a blanket of fresh snow that transformed the countryside into a glittering wonderland. After a long day's journey, Katherine's first glimpse of Quinlay Park came as they crested a hill overlooking a wide valley. The manor house stood majestic against the winter landscape, an imposing Tudor structure with later Georgian additions, its windows glowing amber against the approaching twilight. It's beautiful, she breathed, forgetting for a moment the circumstances that had brought her here. Lord Quinlay, who had spent most of the journey in silence reviewing correspondence, glanced at her. You approve? How could anyone not? It's magnificent. Something unfamiliar flickered in his eyes. It has been in my family for 12 generations. You must be very proud of such heritage. Pride has little to do with duty, Countess. Quinlay Park must be preserved for future generations, regardless of personal sentiment. The carriage rolled down the long drive lined with ancient oaks, their branches heavy with snow. As they approached, Katherine could see staff assembled on the steps, a welcoming party for their master and his new bride. They don't know, do they? She asked suddenly. About the nature of our marriage. Lord Quinley's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? They believe this is a love match. His laugh was short and without humor. My staff are not romantics, I assure you. They understand practicality. The carriage rolled to a stop. Before the footman could assist her, Lord Quinlay offered his hand. Shall we, Countess? Your new domain awaits. Katherine placed her gloved hand in his, surprised by the strength in his grip as he helped her descend. For the briefest moment, standing close beside him in the winter air, she caught a scent that was uniquely his, sandalwood and something else, something unexpectedly warm. Welcome to Quinlay Park, my lord, my lady. A distinguished silver-haired woman stepped forward and curtsied deeply. Everything is prepared for your arrival. Thank you, Mrs. Winters, Lord Quinlay said. Allow me to present the Countess. Katherine smiled warmly at the housekeeper. I'm very pleased to meet you, Mrs. Winters. I look forward to learning about Quinlay Park under your guidance. The housekeeper's eyes widened slightly at this unexpected deference from her new mistress. It would be my honor, my lady. Lord Quinlay led Katherine up the steps, his hand at the small of her back. For all the staff watching, they appeared the very picture of a contented noble couple returning home. Only Katherine felt the careful distance he maintained between them, the precise calculation in his touch, enough to appear proper, never enough to suggest intimacy. As they crossed the threshold into the grand entrance hall, with its soaring ceilings and ancestral portraits, Lord Quinlay leaned close to her ear. Well played, Countess, he murmured. Perhaps you'll make a convincing mistress of Quinlay Park after all. Before she could respond, he had already stepped away, instructing the butler about his correspondence. The first weeks at Quinlay Park established a pattern. Lord Quinlay spent his days managing estate business, often riding out to inspect farms or meeting with his steward. Katherine, meanwhile, immersed herself in learning the intricate workings of the great house. To Mrs. Winters' evident surprise, the new Countess proved both capable and determined. Katherine rose early each morning, reviewed menus with the cook, inspected the still room and pantries, and familiarized herself with the household accounts. If I may say so, my lady, Mrs. Winters ventured one morning as they completed the linen inventory, you have a natural talent for household management. Katherine smiled. Necessity is an excellent teacher, Mrs. Winters. My mother died when I was 16, and our circumstances required that I take charge. His lordship chose wisely then, the housekeeper observed. Katherine kept her expression neutral. His lordship is a practical man. In the evenings, Katherine and Lord Quinley dined together in formal silence, attended by footmen and the butler. He would inquire politely about her day, listen to her brief responses with detached interest, and offer minimal information about his own activities. After dinner, he would retire to his study, leaving Katherine to her own devices in the cavernous drawing room. They had separate bedchambers, connected by a dressing room that remained firmly locked from both sides. On the third Sunday following their arrival, Katherine attended church services in the village of Upper Quinley with her husband. The small Norman church was filled with curious onlookers eager for a glimpse of the new countess. "They're all staring," she whispered as they took their seats in the family pew. "You're a novelty," Lord Quinley replied quietly. "The Cold Earl rarely attends services, and never before with a wife." "Never?" Katherine couldn't help her surprise. At 35, surely he had courted before. "I've been the subject of matrimonial speculation for years, but found no reason to indulge society's expectations until now." "Until you needed an heir," she said, the words escaping before she could reconsider. His eyes met hers, winter-grey and unreadable. "Yes. Until then." The service proceeded, but Katherine found herself unable to focus on the vicar's sermon. Instead, her mind filled with questions about the enigmatic man beside her. What had shaped him into this cold, calculating figure? Why did he hold himself apart from everyone, including the wife he had purchased for the express purpose of continuing his bloodline? As they rose for the final hymn, Lord Quinley's hand accidentally brushed against hers. Katherine felt him stiffen, then deliberately shift away, creating distance between them on the narrow pew. After the service, they were intercepted by the vicar, a kindly gentleman with spectacles perched on his nose. "Lord Quinley, what a pleasure to see you in attendance. And this must be your countess." He bowed to Katherine. "Welcome to our parish, my lady. We are all delighted by his lordship's good fortune." "Thank you, vicar," Katherine replied warmly. "The service was lovely. Lady Quinley has expressed interest in the church's charity work," Lord Quinley said unexpectedly. "Perhaps you might enlighten her regarding local needs." Katherine glanced at him in surprise. She had mentioned no such thing. "Oh, what a wonderful notion," the vicar exclaimed. "We do have several worthy causes, my lady. There's the orphanage in Matlock, of course, and our own village school could use a benefactress." "I would be pleased to learn more," Katherine said, recovering quickly. "Perhaps I might call this week." "Splendid, splendid. Tuesday afternoon would be ideal, if that suits." As they walked back to their carriage, Katherine asked quietly, "Why did you suggest charity work?" "You seem to require occupation beyond household management," Lord Quinley replied matter-of-factly. "Local philanthropy is an appropriate outlet for a countess's energies." "How considerate of you to think of my needs," she said, unable to keep a hint of sarcasm from her tone. To her surprise, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Practicality again, countess. An idle wife becomes a curious wife. And curiosity in this household would be inconvenient. What secrets do you hide, Lord Quinley, that you fear my curiosity?" He handed her into the carriage, his expression once more unreadable. "Everyone has secrets, Katherine. Even you." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something in the way he said it, soft and almost intimate, caused her heart to beat faster. But by the time he had settled across from her in the carriage, the moment had passed, and the Cold Earl had returned. January blew in with a ferocious blizzard that howled around Quinley Park for 3 days, trapping its inhabitants indoors. On the second evening, Katherine found herself wandering the portrait gallery after dinner, a single candelabra lighting her way as she studied the faces of Quinley's past. She paused before a portrait of a young man with familiar grey eyes, though his expression held a warmth she had never witnessed in her husband's gaze. The nameplate read Lord Frederick Quinley, 9th Earl, 1785 to 1830. "My father." Katherine startled at the voice behind her. Lord Quinley stood in the shadowed doorway, watching her. "Forgive me, I didn't hear you approach." "Few do." He stepped into the gallery, his eyes fixed on the portrait. He died when I was 10. I'm sorry, Katherine said softly. Was illness the cause? Dueling. A matter of honor, or so I was told. How terrible for a child to lose a father that way. Lord Quinley's jaw tightened. My father made his choices. He moved past her to stand before another portrait, a beautiful dark-haired woman with a serene smile. My mother. She followed him to the grave within a year. From grief? Katherine asked gently. From laudanum. She found comfort in it after his death, until one night she took too much. His voice betrayed no emotion, as if reciting facts from a history book. I found her. Katherine's heart contracted painfully at the image of a boy discovering his mother's lifeless body. Damien, she said, using his given name without thinking. He turned sharply at the sound, his eyes widening slightly. I am truly sorry, she continued. No child should endure such loss. For a moment, something raw and vulnerable flashed across his features. Then it was gone, replaced by his customary mask of indifference. It was many years ago, he said dismissively. Ancient history. Some wounds never fully heal, Katherine observed quietly. Lord Quinley studied her face in the candlelight. You speak from experience. It wasn't a question, but Katherine found herself answering anyway. My mother's death was different, a fever took her quickly. But the absence, that hollowness. I understand it. And yet you remain devoted to your father, despite his flaws. He wasn't always as you know him, Katherine defended. Before my mother died, he was different, warm, loving, responsible. Grief changed him. Grief is not an excuse for abandoning one's responsibilities, Lord Quinley said harshly. No, but it can explain it. Katherine looked up at the portrait of his mother. Just as it might explain why the son of these two people grew into a man who keeps everyone at arm's length. His eyes narrowed dangerously. You presume too much, Countess. Perhaps, she conceded. Or perhaps not enough. Good night, my lord. Katherine turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Tomorrow evening, join me in the library after dinner. There are estate matters we should discuss. She nodded, surprised by the invitation. As you wish. The library at Quinley Park was a bibliophile's dream, 2 stories of leather-bound volumes with sliding ladders and intimate reading nooks tucked between the shelves. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, before which Lord Quinley stood when Katherine entered the following evening. You requested my presence, my lord. He turned, and Katherine was struck by how the firelight softened his features, lending warmth to his usually austere countenance. Yes. Please, sit. He gestured to one of 2 leather armchairs positioned before the fire. As she took her seat, Katherine noticed a ledger and several maps spread across a nearby table. You've taken an interest in the village school, he began, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. Yes, I visited the vicar yesterday as planned. The building needs significant repairs before winter's end. He handed her one of the glasses. Brandy. To ward off the chill. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and this time, he did not pull away quite so quickly. Thank you. Katherine took a small sip, the liquor warming her throat. I've reviewed the charitable accounts, he said, taking the seat opposite her. I'm prepared to allocate funds for the school repairs, but I would like you to oversee the project. Katherine couldn't hide her surprise. You're entrusting me with this responsibility. You've proven yourself capable with the household. Mrs. Winters sings your praises, and the staff appears contented. High praise indeed from the Cold Earl, she remarked, instantly regretting the words. But instead of offense, a corner of his mouth lifted in what might almost be called a smile. Is that what they call me? I've heard worse. Forgive me, I shouldn't have, there's nothing to forgive. It's an accurate assessment. He sipped his brandy, his eyes fixed on the dancing flames. I've never claimed to be otherwise. Katherine studied him, the proud profile, the tension he carried in his shoulders, the careful control evident in every movement. "Why did you really bring me here tonight, Lord Quinley? Surely you didn't need my presence to approve funds for the school." He was silent for a long moment, then said, "I find myself curious about you." "Curiosity? I thought that was inconvenient in this household," she reminded him. His eyes met hers, and for once, they weren't entirely cold. "Consider it a momentary lapse in judgment." "Very well. What would you like to know? Tell me about the woman behind the competent countess. What does Katherine Zellwood, forgive me, Katherine Quinley, desire from life?" The question caught her off guard. "I haven't had the luxury of considering my desires for some time. Necessity has dictated my choices. And if necessity were removed from the equation?" Katherine considered this. "I would want what most people want, I suppose. Purpose. Connection. To make some positive difference in the world." "Not love?" he asked, something unreadable in his expression. "Love is a luxury few can afford," she said quietly. "Particularly women in our society. Yet you defended your father's weaknesses in its name." "I understand him." "Understanding isn't the same as approval." She hesitated, then added, "Just as I'm beginning to understand you, Lord Quinley." His eyebrows rose. "Are you indeed? And what do you understand about me?" "That your coldness is a fortress, built brick by brick since you were 10 years old. That you believe emotion leads to weakness, so you've excised it from your life. That you married me not just for an heir, but because you thought me similarly practical, untouched by messy sentiments that might complicate our arrangement." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. "And was I wrong?" Katherine met his gaze steadily. "I am practical. I am capable. But I am not cold, my lord. Nor do I believe that caring for others constitutes weakness. Even when those others betray that care. When they abandon their responsibilities and leave destruction in their wake." There was something raw in his voice now, something she'd never heard before. "Even then," she said softly. "Because the alternative is to become imprisoned by the very walls meant to protect you." Lord Quinley rose abruptly and moved to the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the night. "You speak of things you cannot understand." "Cannot? Or that you fear I might understand too well?" He turned, and in the firelight, Katherine glimpsed something unexpected in his eyes: vulnerability. "This conversation has strayed into inappropriate territory," he said, his voice once more controlled. "You have my approval for the school project. Coordinate with Mr. Wilson, the steward, regarding funds." Just like that, the moment was gone, the walls rebuilt. "As you wish, my lord," Katherine said, rising. "Good night." As she reached the door, his voice stopped her once more. "Katherine." She turned. "Yes?" He hesitated, then said simply, "The funds are unlimited. Do whatever you deem necessary for the children." It wasn't what he had intended to say, or of that, she was certain. But it was, perhaps, a small crack in the fortress. "Thank you, Damien," she replied softly, and closed the door behind her. February brought a thaw, both in the weather and, gradually, in the relationship between the Earl and Countess of Quinley. Their evening conversations in the library became a routine, initially focused on estate business but slowly expanding to include literature, politics, and philosophy. Lord Quinley revealed himself to be not only educated but thoughtful, with unexpectedly progressive views on certain matters. "You support women's property rights?" Katherine asked one evening, astonished by his commentary on a newspaper article. "I support logic," he replied. "The current laws are archaic and inefficient. A woman capable of managing a household is certainly capable of managing her own finances. Many men would disagree. Many men are fools." He glanced at her over his brandy glass. "Present company accepted, of course." "Of course," she echoed, hiding a smile. Katherine's school project proceeded rapidly. With the Earl's backing, she hired local craftsmen to repair the roof and floors, commissioned new desks and supplies, and even established a small fund to ensure the schoolmaster received a living wage. "The children prepared something for you," the vicar told her during a visit in late February. To show their gratitude. Katherine found herself presented with a crudely bound book of drawings and letters from the pupils. Touched beyond words, she carried it back to Quinley Park to show her husband. She found him in his study, focused on correspondence. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said from the doorway. He looked up, and the oddest thing happened, his expression softened at the sight of her. "Not at all. Come in." Katherine approached his desk, the children's gift in her hands. "The village school presented me with this today." Lord Quinley accepted the homemade book, turning the pages with unexpected gentleness. "They're grateful. It was your generosity that made it possible. My money. Your vision." He looked up at her. "You've given those children more than just a sound roof and new slates, Katherine. You've given them hope." The sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter strangely. "Perhaps we both have." His eyes held hers for a long moment before he cleared his throat and returned to the book. "This young artist has a promising future," he observed, indicating a particularly detailed drawing. "That's Timothy Harding, the blacksmith's son. He has remarkable talent. We should arrange proper instruction for him." "We?" Katherine asked, surprised by his personal interest. "Is that not what marriage entails? Joint decisions?" There was something almost vulnerable in the question. "Yes," she said softly. "I suppose it does." Later that week, a package arrived for Katherine. Inside, she found a set of high-quality watercolors and sketching materials with a note in Lord Quinley's precise handwriting for Timothy Harding. "From both of us." It was a small gesture, yet it affected Katherine profoundly. Somewhere beneath the Cold Earl's carefully constructed exterior beat a heart capable of compassion. The realization was both comforting and terrifying. March arrived with renewed purpose at Quinley Park. Katherine had taken to joining Lord Quinley on his morning rides, discovering a shared love of horsemanship as they galloped across the awakening countryside. In the afternoons, she divided her time between household duties and her expanding charitable work, which now included regular visits to the orphanage in Matlock. "You're transforming Quinley Park," Mrs. Winters remarked one morning as they discussed plans for replanting the kitchen gardens. "It hasn't felt this alive in decades." Katherine demurred, but privately, she had noticed changes too, more laughter among the servants, rooms that had been shuttered now opened to sunlight, and most surprisingly, the increasingly frequent sound of Lord Quinley's deep laugh echoing through the halls. He was still reserved, still guarded, but moments of warmth had begun to break through with increasing regularity. Katherine found herself looking forward to their evenings together, to the debates and discussions that often lasted well into the night. Until the letter arrived. Katherine was arranging spring flowers in the morning room when Jenkins, the butler, approached with a silver salver. "A letter from London, my lady." The handwriting was her father's, instantly recognizable despite its uneven slant, evidence he'd been drinking when he wrote it. With a sense of foreboding, Katherine broke the seal and began to read. "My dearest Katherine, I write with grave news. Despite Lord Quinley's generous settlement, I find myself once more in difficult circumstances. Certain investments have proven unsound, and creditors grow impatient. I require an additional £2,000 immediately to avoid catastrophe. Surely your husband, with his vast resources, would not miss such a trifling sum? For the sake of your dear papa, won't you speak to him on my behalf? Your loving father. Charles Zellwood. Katherine closed her eyes, mortification washing over her. Twice already since her marriage, smaller sums had been requested and provided, drawn from her personal allowance, without troubling Lord Quinley. But this amount was beyond her means. She was still staring at the letter when a shadow fell across the page. Looking up, she found her husband watching her, his expression unreadable. "Troubling news?" he inquired. Katherine considered lying, then discarded the notion. My father requires funds. Again. Something hardened in Lord Quinley's eyes. How much? It doesn't matter. I won't ask you for it. He held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Katherine surrendered the letter. Lord Quinley read it swiftly, his jaw tightening. £2,000. After the 5,000 debt I forgave and the 10,000 settlement. I'm sorry, Katherine said, humiliation burning her cheeks. I had no knowledge of this. No. His voice was dangerously soft. Yet this letter suggests previous requests have been met. From your allowance, I presume. Katherine nodded mutely. I see. He folded the letter precisely. And you intended to do what, exactly, about this particular demand? I thought to write to him, explain that such sums are beyond my means. And when that fails to deter him? When the next letter arrives, with the next sob story? I don't know, she admitted. I had hoped that his nature would somehow change. Lord Quinley's voice was bitter. That is the very definition of foolishness, Katherine. The contempt in his tone stung. He is still my father. He is a parasite who would bleed you dry without a second thought. He pocketed the letter. I will handle this matter. Alarm coursed through her. What do you intend to do? What I should have done initially, ensure Charles Zellwood cannot continue to exploit his daughter's sense of filial duty. Please, Katherine said, rising to her feet. Don't harm him. Lord Quinley's expression was ice. Your concern for a man who has caused you nothing but pain is both irrational and misplaced. As is your anger, she countered. This isn't about my father at all, is it? This is about yours. About all those who have failed you. Do not presume to analyze me, he snapped. You know nothing of my thoughts. Don't I? We've spent months together, Damien. I've seen the man behind the Cold Earl, the man who secretly funds an orphanage, who notices a blacksmith's son with artistic talent, who debates philosophy until midnight because he enjoys the challenge. That man is not cruel. Perhaps you've seen what you wish to see. His voice was flat, emotionless. Our arrangement was clear from the beginning. A business transaction, nothing more. The words cut deeper than they should have. Yes, you've made that abundantly clear. Forgive me for forgetting my place. Katherine swept past him, head high despite the tears threatening to fall. At the doorway, she paused. Whatever you decide regarding my father, I ask only that you remember he is the sole family I have left in this world, flawed though he may be. Without waiting for a response, she left the room, hurrying to her chambers where she could finally let the tears fall freely. For 3 days, an arctic silence descended upon Quinley Park. Lord Quinley departed for London without a word to his wife, leaving Katherine to wonder what retribution he planned for her father. She moved through her duties mechanically, her thoughts a turmoil of worry and hurt. On the evening of the 3rd day, she sat alone in the library, a book open but unread in her lap. The door opened, and Lord Quinley entered, travel-worn but composed. You've returned, Katherine said, her voice carefully neutral. Obviously. He removed his gloves, studying her pale face. You've not been sleeping. Concern for my father's welfare has made rest difficult. I see. He moved to the sideboard, pouring himself a measure of brandy. Your father is currently on a ship bound for the West Indies. Katherine gasped. You had him transported? For debt? Don't be absurd, Lord Quinley replied sharply. I've secured him a position as an estate manager for an associate of mine. The climate agrees with his health, the distance makes further attempts to exploit you impossible, and the work will keep him occupied and sober. I don't understand. It's quite simple. Your father requires structure and purpose, not endless financial rescue. This position provides both, along with a respectable salary he'll forfeit if he returns to gambling. He took a seat opposite her. The £2,000 he requested has been placed in trust, to be released quarterly in small amounts for genuine necessities. Katherine stared at him, speechless. You disapprove, he concluded from her silence. No, she said quickly. I'm just surprised. This is far kinder than I expected. Yes, well. He looked uncomfortable. Contrary to popular belief, I am not entirely without compassion. I never thought you were, Katherine said softly. Even at your coldest. Something shifted in his expression. I behaved poorly before my departure. My reaction was excessive. Coming from Lord Quinley, this was tantamount to an apology. Katherine accepted it with a slight nod. Thank you for not punishing him for my sake. I did it for both our sakes, he admitted. Your happiness matters to me, Katherine. More than I anticipated. The confession hung between them, fragile and unexpected. And yours matters to me, she replied, finding courage in his vulnerability. More than our arrangement should allow. Lord Quinley, Damien, set his glass aside and leaned forward. Our arrangement has evolved beyond its original parameters, has it not? It has, she agreed, her heart beating faster. When I proposed our marriage, I believed myself incapable of the softer emotions. I had excised them deliberately, seeing them only as weaknesses to be exploited. His voice was low, intimate. You were right about the fortress, Katherine. But what you couldn't know was that you've been dismantling it, stone by stone, since you arrived at Quinley Park. Katherine scarcely dared breathe. Damien. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, a rare uncertainty in his eyes. I've never allowed myself to need anyone. Slowly, Katherine rose and crossed to his chair. She knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. Neither have I. Perhaps we can learn together. His fingers tightened around hers. I cannot promise to be demonstrative or effusive. My nature remains reserved. I don't want you to be anyone but yourself, she assured him. The man I've come to admire is neither cold nor cruel, merely cautious with his trust. And given your experiences, who could blame you? And yet you trust so readily, despite your own disappointments. Not readily, she corrected. But when earned, without reservation. Have I earned it? He asked, a vulnerability in his voice she'd never heard before. Yes, Katherine said simply. Just as I hope I've earned yours. Instead of answering with words, Damien raised her hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles with such tenderness that tears sprang to Katherine's eyes. My father once told me that the Quinley men love only once, but when they do, it's absolute, he said quietly. I never understood what he meant until now. Katherine's breath caught. Are you saying? I'm saying that what began as a business arrangement has become the most important relationship of my life. I'm saying that the thought of hurting you is intolerable to me. I'm saying. He paused, struggling visibly with words that had likely never crossed his lips. I love you, Katherine. Against all logic and contrary to every principle I've lived by. Tears slipped down Katherine's cheeks. And I love you, Damien. Not the Earl of Quinley, not your fortune or position, but you, with all your complexity and hidden warmth. He reached out, brushing the tears from her face with gentle fingers. I've made you cry. Happy tears, she assured him, turning her face into his palm. I would like to kiss my wife, he said softly. Properly, this time. I would like that very much. Damien drew her up and into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that held none of the coldness of their wedding day. Instead, it was warm, tender, and filled with promise, the first true kiss between the Earl and Countess of Quinley. When they parted, Damien rested his forehead against hers. I believe, my love, that it's time we dispensed with separate bedchambers. Katherine smiled, her heart overflowing. I believe you're right, my lord. Epilogue, 1 year later. Are you certain you wish to attend? Damien asked, adjusting his cravat as he watched his wife in the mirror's reflection. Lady Harrington's soirees are notoriously tedious. Katherine smiled, placing a protective hand over her swollen abdomen. I'm perfectly well, and our presence is expected. The ton still hasn't quite recovered from the transformation of the Cold Earl into a devoted husband. Let them gossip, he said dismissively, turning to face her. I care only for your comfort. 6 months with child doesn't make me an invalid, she reminded him. Besides, I've promised the orphanage committee I'll speak with Lady Harrington about a donation. Damien shook his head in fond exasperation. Always another charitable cause? You indulge them all, she pointed out. I indulge you, he corrected, placing his hand over hers where it rested on their unborn child. A dangerous precedent, perhaps. One you seem content to maintain. Katherine reached up to straighten his already perfect cravat, a habit born of affection rather than necessity. Guilty as charged. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I received a letter from your father this morning. Oh? How is he faring in Jamaica? Remarkably well. The plantation's productivity has increased 30% under his management. Damien's tone held grudging approval. He inquires after your health and sends his love. He also asks if we've chosen a name for his grandchild. Have we? Katherine asked. They discussed several possibilities, but reached no firm decision. Damien hesitated. I thought, if it's a boy, perhaps Frederick, after my father. The suggestion touched her deeply. Despite the complicated relationship Damien had with his father's memory, this gesture represented healing, a willingness to connect with his past while building their future. Frederick Quinley, she said thoughtfully. It has a distinguished sound. And for a girl. Eleanor, after your mother, he suggested. Tears pricked Katherine's eyes. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me, he said simply. Katherine rose on tiptoes to kiss him, marveling at how far they had come from that cold December day when he had proposed their business arrangement. The Earl of Quinley was still reserved in company, still formidable in business matters, but in private, with her, the ice had melted completely. We should depart soon if we're to arrive at a fashionable hour, Damien said, reluctantly breaking their kiss. Yes, we must maintain appearances, Katherine agreed with mock seriousness. Heaven forbid London society should discover the Cold Earl is actually warm-blooded. Damien laughed, the sound still rare enough to delight her. That particular secret, my love, I reserve exclusively for you. As they descended the grand staircase of Quinley House, arm in arm, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a forced marriage of convenience to a union of deepest love. The Coldest Earl in London had indeed been transformed, not by any dramatic gesture, but by the patient warmth of everyday affection. And as he helped her into their carriage, his hand protectively cradling hers, the look in Damien Quinley's eyes told Katherine all she needed to know, that the fortress walls had crumbled completely, and in their place stood something far stronger, a heart fully awakened, capable of both giving and receiving love without reservation or fear.